Past the bar yet, sweetheart? Dad's voice carried that familiar edge of mockery across the polished mahogany table. Or are you still pushing papers? I took a measured sip of wine, thinking of the Supreme Court briefs stacked on my desk. Still at it, Dad. He turned to my brother Michael, the family favorite and senior partner at his firm. See? No focus. No ambition. Just like her mother. Mom stayed silent, eyes fixed on her plate. My sister-in-law, Catherine, tried and failed to hide a smirk. The weekly dinner was running its usual course. At least she's employed, Mom murmured. Working at the courthouse is steady work. Dad snorted. Barely more than a paralegal. Though someone has to shuffle papers for the real attorneys. Michael laughed. Remember when she said she'd argue before the Supreme Court? That was adorable. I glanced at my phone under the table, scanning tomorrow's docket. The Chin Industries antitrust case, Dad's crown jewel, was first. He didn't know I'd be the one on the bench. Speaking of cases, Dad continued, puffing up, biggest of my career tomorrow. It'll change the face of corporate law. Not that you'd grasp it, dear. Sounds intense, I said mildly, recalling the gaping holes I'd already found in his argument. Please, he said, cutting into his steak. I've seen tougher. The opposition's got some newly appointed judge, probably some political fluke who can't tell Richardson versus Thompson from a grocery list. I smiled faintly. I'd written the law school paper that redefined Richardson versus Thompson, the same one Dad had called naive. Tell her about that case, Catherine teased. Though it might be a bit beyond her pay grade. The Richardson doctrine? I asked sweetly. Or the Thompson model on market consolidation? Dad froze mid-bite. You've heard of those? They come up sometimes, I said. In the filing room. Michael chuckled. Sure they do. Mom tried to smooth things over. She's learning. That's something. Learning how to alphabetize, maybe, Dad replied, amused. Doubt she knows what Richardson even means for interstate commerce. I thought of my clerk's notes outlining exactly how his case violated Richardson's core ruling. Tomorrow was going to be fun. So, Dad, I said casually, tell us more about this big case. I heard it's before a new justice. Some rookie, he said with a wave. Probably barely out of diapers. But they'll figure out who's in charge soon enough. My phone buzzed, an update from my clerk about tomorrow's questioning. The questions that would unravel Dad's entire case. You should come watch, Michael said, grinning. See what real lawyers do. You might pick up a thing or two. Oh, I'll be there, I promised, picturing my black robes hanging in my chambers. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The filing room's right by the action. Catherine smirked. Dad raised his glass. To justice, he declared, and to those who actually understand it. I lifted mine, hiding a smile. To tomorrow's lessons. The next morning, I sat behind the bench in my Supreme Court chambers, reviewing Dad's file one last time. My clerk, James, stood beside me. Your father's firm filled the first 3 rows, he said. They look confident. And my family? I asked, adjusting my robes. Front row, James replied, a hint of amusement in his tone. They still seem puzzled about why they were invited. James hesitated at the door, tablet in hand. Your brother's out there telling everyone he plans to translate the legal jargon for you during recess. I smiled faintly, scanning my list of prepared questions. Have they uncovered my nameplate yet? Not until the formal announcement, he said, amusement tugging at his mouth. Your father, however, is currently explaining that the rookie justice probably needs a crash course in Antitrust 101. Through the window, I caught sight of the courtroom filling. Lawyers took their seats in neat rows. Dad's bright red tie stood out, his confidence unmistakable even from here. The press turnout's heavy, James noted. First major antitrust trial under the new justice, after all. The same justice who supposedly scraped by the bar exam? I asked, echoing last night's dinner table insult. He nodded. Your brother's holding court in the hallway, regaling the associates about how his little sister, the courthouse file clerk, can't possibly grasp their revolutionary strategy. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom, saved you a seat near the back. Hope you can see all right. What's our countdown? I asked, tightening my robe. 3 minutes to the opening, James replied, handing over the final briefing. Your father just asked when the academic appointee would arrive, said they're probably some theorist who's never handled a real trial. I smiled to myself, recalling my years on the federal bench, the late nights, the landmark opinions, the careful anonymity I'd preserved. All of it leading here. The Richardson precedent forms the core of their defense, right? I asked. Unfortunately for them, yes, James said. Your notes from last night identify 16 separate misinterpretations. Beyond the door, murmurs from the gallery settled. Dad's booming voice rose over the crowd. Now watch how professionals handle the Supreme Court. James stifled a grin. Your sister-in-law is giving the partners' wives a rundown on courtroom etiquette. Just said it's sweet that they let you work here, even if it's in some minor role. I gathered my notes, straightened my posture, and glanced at my reflection. Calm. Composed. Ready. How's the betting pool? I asked. 2 months' salary riding on your father, he replied. Though a few clerks quietly took your side, after reading your line of questioning. A firm knock came at the door. All rise, called the marshal. James looked at me. Ready, Justice? I thought of the years of dismissal, the dinners, the smirks, the laughter. The way my own family had mistaken silence for weakness. One favor, I said, smoothing the robe across my shoulders. Tell the photographer to capture their faces during the introduction. The marshal's voice filled the chamber. All rise. The Supreme Court of the United States is now in session. The Honorable Justice Alexandra Chin presiding. A collective hush fell. Through my peripheral vision, I saw Dad's notepad tumble from his hand, his face draining of color as realization dawned. Please be seated, I said evenly, placing my notes before me. Case on the docket, Chin Industries versus the Federal Trade Commission. Counsel, please state your appearances. Dad opened his mouth but no sound emerged. In the front row, Michael sat rigid, his tailored suit suddenly too tight, while Catherine's practiced smile faltered into shock. Dad stammered, the legendary composure that once filled courtrooms nowhere to be found. Counsel, I prompted again, my tone calm, authoritative, unchallenged. The courtroom held its breath. State your appearance for the record, Mr. Chin. My father cleared his throat, his trademark red tie now matching the flush spreading up his neck. Jonathan Chin, for the petitioner, Chin Industries. Noted, I said evenly. I opened his brief, the same one he'd bragged about over dinner. Let's begin, counsel. Your argument rests heavily on Richardson versus Thompson, claiming it supports your theory of market consolidation. That's an unusual interpretation. The air in the courtroom thickened. Every attorney in the gallery understood what was unfolding. The great Jonathan Chin was standing before the daughter he'd dismissed as barely a paralegal. The Richardson doctrine clearly, he started. Does it? I cut in, voice calm but sharp. Because the controlling opinion, specifically footnote 23, undermines your entire premise. Unless, of course, you believe the Chief Justice was mistaken. In the gallery, Michael was flipping frantically through his brief, while Catherine looked ready to vanish through the nearest door. Perhaps, I continued lightly, you're referring to the interpretation I published in the Harvard Law Review, the one you once called, if I recall, amateur hour legal theory. Dad's hand shook as he reached for his glass. Behind him, his partners exchanged uneasy glances, watching their senior counsel unravel in real time. Your Honor, he tried again, the current market mirrors the Thompson precedent. Which, I interjected smoothly, as any first-year law student could tell you, explicitly forbids the very consolidation you're defending, unless my years of filing paperwork have clouded my understanding. From the gallery, I caught Mom's expression, wide-eyed, astonished, and for the first time in years, proud. One of Dad's partners whispered urgently, "The briefing schedule was clearly outlined in my chamber's order," I said without missing a beat. Unless, of course, it was misplaced by our supposedly unqualified staff. Sunlight spilled across my bench, catching the gold trim of my robe. Every eye in the room was locked on us. "Counsel," I said, my tone level but commanding, "would you care to revise your opinion on this court's qualifications, or shall we continue discussing your creative approach to precedents I helped write?" Dad's composure shattered completely. "Your Honor, Alexandra, Justice Chin," I corrected gently. "Though I understand the confusion. Dinner conversation can blur professional titles." The gallery rippled with whispers. The once unshakable Jonathan Chin stood speechless before his daughter's bench. "Now," I said, holding up his brief, "would you like to start with the 16 fatal errors in your argument? Or perhaps explain how the so-called paralegal you dismissed managed to reach this seat while you weren't looking?" The late afternoon light stretched long across the marble floor as I lifted the ruling I'd authored last term. "And, counsel, about that remark you made last night? Someone has to file the paperwork, wasn't it?" I smiled slightly. "You'll find my filings exceptionally thorough. This case is dismissed." As Dad staggered back to his table, I glanced toward the gallery. Mom sat tall, chin lifted, eyes bright with something that looked a lot like triumph. "Court is adjourned," I declared, standing. Then, after a beat, I added with a hint of warmth, "And I'll see you all at dinner tonight. Let's hope everyone remembers where they're seated this time."